This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
This one starts with an image that feels kind of cinematic in its eeriness. Christmas night, going all the way back to 2022. While most people were winding down from family dinners and wrapping themselves in the comfort of routine, Bryan Kohberger sat alone at a computer, clicking. And what he was clicking through is what makes this the real creepy part. One of the bleakest corners of the internet, a clunky site cataloging serial killers by name and timeline. He wasn't casually scrolling. He was downloading file after file. Biographies of infamous murderers. Like literally keeping them on his computer. Among them, one name came up more than once. Danny Rawling. He was known as the Gainesville Ripper. Kohberger didn't just skim Danny Rawling's information. He downloaded Rawling's case twice in one sitting, as if the story of a man who knifed his way into history wasn't just information, but something worth revisiting. Having a rerun of the same story right after you just watched it. Studying, maybe even modeling. And this is where the questions start to get uncomfortable. Was Kohberger simply indulging in academic interest? After all, he was a PhD student in criminology. That's what I'm sure he was hoping folks would think if they looked at him any closer. Or was he looking at Rawling, a man who broke into student apartments at night, used a K-bar knife, and slaughtered young college girls in their beds? As kind of a blueprint. Because what happened in Gainesville in 1990 and what happened in Moscow, Idaho in 2022 bear a resemblance that's almost too on the nose to dismiss as a, well, coincidence. I mean, this is just so creepy. The coincidences with this one. And I'm honestly surprised that we didn't hear comparisons to this earlier on, or maybe we did, and I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of comparisons that came out there.
I want to know what is going through somebody's mind, and maybe you don't celebrate the holidays. Maybe Christmas is a icky time of year for you. For a number of years, Christmas was really not something I was looking forward to in my previous situation, but I can't say that I ever went to the computer and started looking up serial killers. I might have been shopping the after Christmas sales.
Yeah.
Maybe scrolling on TikTok for, cute cat videos or communicating with friends on,
but you
Messenger.
Also didn't just slaughter 4 people either. So
well, that's correct.
So what one is looking up after that is an I mean, what's interesting is he didn't get a chance to cover these tracks because he covered so many, but these are kind of like leading right up to where they got him. So I think this is really giving us a window into all of the stuff he deleted. Because if this is what was going on before he could do that wipe, this is the same sort of stuff that was going on before then. So I'm really curious about how much he did idolize this guy or really thought he could do it better. Or at the end of the day, what's interesting is just he was a copycat. He was a copycat.
Don't you think, though, with his intelligence level that he could have, I guess it would be interesting to find out from either Robin Dreeke or Jennifer Coffindaffer, or maybe even Siobhan Scott, what goes on that they need to copy somebody else's? Why can't you be original about
A lot
this?
of them don't. A lot of them are original. This guy's not.
Why? He was intelligent. He could have done his own thing.
Because he didn't have his own thing. He was just like a very programmable robot. And I think, I mean, he could take things in, but then he's very, very scientific and measured with how things come in and come out. It's always formal because there isn't emotion. He doesn't mix with emotion. So good and bad and hurt and all of that doesn't compute. He doesn't have empathy.
He just needed a template to follow.
Yeah. And if you follow the template, you can kind of get along in life for long enough until you can't. And especially the other things he's had going on with his mind, his obsessions and all of that. I mean, that's just a recipe to spiral into what he spiraled into. And
so this is absolute premeditation and just methodical planning of this event.
Yeah, I think I was talking with Coffindaffer about it today, and it's going to be in segments that are coming out this week. Because I was saying, do you think at the end of the day here, he went in there and was so shocked by having to kill 4 people that, you know, did that break something in him? Did that mess him up, or did that make him feel stronger? Because I think he went in there with the intent to go after one person.
I was just going to ask, how many do you think?
But I don't even know it was to murder either. I think it might have been to threaten, to scare, to SA. I think that would, but I don't know that. I just wonder if it got in there and then everything just got so out of control, and he had this in his mind because he's been stalking her and for however long that was. And he in his mind thought this is going to be the night he's going to go do this. And to a normal human being, that's horrific. To him, this is like date night.
I was going to say a Friday night.
Yeah, this is not any Friday night. It's that night. It's a night that he in his mind is going to go out with the girl he can't have. And that's what because to him, this is what, I don't know. This is what I'm thinking he's going through in his mind if you're trying to understand the emotions of how this monster thinks. And I'm thinking he's just going after her. And I can almost picture this, and I'm sure it'll be illustrated in some horror movie at some point in time or documentary where they reenact this. But I think you had that very shocked Kohberger look, going on as his plan immediately unraveled. And suddenly there's this rage because he's so pent up and ready to go after one girl, and then everything gets blown to shit by everybody else. And that rage then spills into just executing anyone that was getting in his way. He gets to the girls and there's a friend there. I mean, it's like everything that went wrong for him. And I think I don't know that he went in there with the intent to kill 4 people, because I don't think he knew there were 4 people in there.
Yeah.
I think it was utter animalistic rage that came out of him. And I think he was prepared if he had to murder her, of how to get out of there without being seen. Because everybody talks about, well, he had, he cleaned it, or he didn't clean it up, but he got out pretty clean. So I think he was prepared for that one person. But I just think it went so out of control. It ended up working to his benefit that there ended up being 4 people, and he was protected from whatever he was wearing or whatever he had going on. I don't know that he was planning on killing 4 people, and this doesn't make it better or anything. I'm just trying to figure out what that plan was, because when it comes to, I think, executing real life and what's in his mind, they're 2 very, very different worlds. And I think that was a big factor in this whole nightmare.
What's disturbing to me is the fact that, so he's stalking, let's just say he's stalking one person. You're not doing a real good job. So this is going to be the night. Mm-hmm. And you're not sure how many people are in there?
That's what I'm saying. I think it's just, oh shit. And then he's viewing all these people as, if just you weren't here, if it wasn't for you, you're in the way. You're one of the, what do the incels call men? I know they call the girls Stacy's, Chads. And he's viewing just the rage on, because this guy he's looking at him going, what do I have that you don't have? Why are you here and I'm not?
Yeah.
And so that was what I think accounts for the extra stabbing into his leg. I mean, it was just, it's rage. It's rage at everything he can't have. And it was a spree. But I don't know that it was intended to be a spree. It just I feel like it just kind of happened that way. Do I think he got out of there and felt super high and super great? Yeah, I think that's an prime example with his picture in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looked very proud. He looked like he had just, like there was an achievement behind that look. Like, look what I did.
Yeah.
Damn, I'm good.
And then it started to, I think, get to him, or his paranoia was starting to get to him, because they were looking at him, because he was going to, I believe he was Papa Roger. I believe he was trying to taunt people in the same way BTK did. But I think he started to see how quickly this was spiraling out of that control too. And he got really, really paranoid. Because he was covering his tracks okay for a while. Had there not been that sheath, I don't know. I think there would have, now that we've learned other things too, of people are, talking about, he had a scratch on his face, visible, I'm surprised that didn't get him under interest immediately. Because everybody's like, this just happened. Anybody coming back with weird injuries, I think would have a red flag on them, but I don't know. Back to Rawling. Rawling was older. He was already hardened by years of crime and personal rage when he picked up his knife and crept through unlocked sliding glass doors in Gainesville. Over 4 days, he killed 5 students, mutilating bodies, posing some of them in grotesque displays. It was a wave of terror that sent thousands fleeing campus. Parents yanked their kids out of school. The whole city was just gripped by fear. Rawling later admitted he wanted to be a superstar killer. Well, I'll tell you what. In the words of Gladys Knight on the Pips, superstar, but you didn't get far.
Yeah.
Because he went back to find the electric chair. Oh, yes, he did. Ooh. He's
I had a little Michael in there.
Frying. I don't know if he got he died. He was put to death. I don't know if it was the electric chair, but it was something. Frying like that Bryan Kohberger. Frying like the Bryan Kohberger.
Oh my God, Tony. Shit.
I'd rather fry in his world
and
live without him. He's frying. He's burning. He's going back to... Going back to hell. He's gone. He's going back to hell. Kohberger. Okay, anyway. First concert, Gladys Knight on the Pips and the Temptations, by the way. Wisconsin State Fair, circa 1998.
That was your first?
Yeah. Like the first concert that I went to that I was a real concert, not like, Walleye Weekend or something, or like a little festival. The first concert, it was I believe 38 special, and it was way too loud, and we left within the first song, and I was really little. But this was the first one I remembered, and that's funny. And by that point, there was one Pip,
just one left.
One left.
Mine was Air Supply.
Oh, that would have been a good one.
Yeah. It was very good.
Yeah. Okay. Got the Gladys.
But we digress.
Got the Gladys out of me.
Well, thank goodness for that.
I grew up on Motown stuff. Rawling later admitted he wanted to be a superstar killer. Okay. Even comparing himself to Ted Bundy.
Ooh.
Little comparisons here with Bryan, isn't it? Fame was part of the fuel, violence and notoriety wrapped together. Now look at Kohberger, 28, socially isolated, immersed in the study of criminal behavior, living a life that seems sterile and empty. Investigators later found his phone loaded with shirtless selfies, crime-related downloads, and almost nothing personal. No friends, just relationships. No joy, just him. Documenting himself for himself. Like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. Hey, I called that one.
Yeah, you did.
I
You
called
nailed
it
that.
way back. I think it was like that weekend I called that. I had a graphic for it and everything. And it turned out that's what he was doing. Not trying to take joy in it, but
No.
that was creepy. It was creepy as hell. Tucked in that digital archive, Rawlings' story, stored and opened like a little secret mirror. The overlap is chilling. Rawlings stalked women from the shadows, scoping apartments, peering through windows, plotting when to strike. Kohberger, according to investigators, circled the victim's house in Moscow at least a dozen times in the months leading up to the murders. His phone pinged near their home late at night, over and over. He followed the victims on social media, even messaged one repeatedly, supposedly, but never getting a reply. Both men, in their own decades, hunted in the dark. And the method? Rawlings carried a K-bar knife, the kind issued to Marines, a blade made for combat. He used it to subdue, to kill, to enact violence so intimate it left crime scene investigators reeling. Kohberger's accused of using almost an exact same knife, fixed-blade K-bar, to stab 4 students to death in a matter of minutes. Both attacks centered on the college town ideal. Off-campus housing, bedrooms that should have been safe. Rawlings killed roommates and couples, anyone unlucky enough to be in the wrong apartment. Kohberger walked into a 3-story house filled with young students and left 4 of them dead. But there's a split in the psychology that matters. Rawlings' crimes were drenched in sexual violence. He didn't just kill, he essayed, mutilated, and staged. His rage was tangled up in humiliation, childhood abuse, and a need to dominate women completely. Kohberger's crime, brutal as it was, did carry some signs of the element. Prosecutors have said flat out that there was no evidence of SA, but that doesn't mean that that was not an intent of this crime. It clearly was. So what drove Kohberger? A lot of theories circle back to ego, anger, the thrill of control, and baked in there some sort of a hate for women. Maybe it wasn't about desire in the traditional sense. It was about power, about inserting himself into the same blood-soaked conversations as the men he'd been reading about online. After Rawlings' murders, he camped in the woods, kept moving, committed robberies to stay afloat, and eventually slipped. His DNA back then, just blood type matching, tied him to the scenes. He even left bizarre audio tapes of himself singing songs and confessing to Gemini, an alter ego he blamed for the killings. Kohberger, in contrast, tried to clean up with modern tricks. He turned off his phone during the murders, then powered it back on afterwards as if nothing had happened. He used VPNs, incognito browsing, data wiping software. He searched for auto-detailing shops when police began talking publicly about a white Hyundai Elantra. He even shopped for new cars, scrolling through models that weren't white, weren't Elantras, as though he could erase the most glaring lead connected to him to the crime. Yet, like Rawlings, he too made mistakes, leaving behind the knife sheath with his DNA, a breadcrumb he could not scrub away. Maybe the most unsettling overlap is what came after. Rawlings basked in his infamy, giving interviews, writing more songs, and becoming a grotesque sort of celebrity until his execution in 2006. Kohberger, in his own way, seemed to do something similar. Downloaded every official police press release about the Idaho murders, tracked media coverage, Googled himself. He was watching his own case unfold step by step, almost like a specter of his own notoriety. That level of narcissism isn't just creepy. A need to see how the world reads, to measure your place, the pantheon of killers you once studied. Rawling wanted to be Bundy. Kohberger downloaded on Rawling. Both men were loners, fueled by internal storms of rage, ego, and emptiness. And both turned to the knife. The bedrooms of young students, to the kind of crimes that shatter the illusion of safety in a college town. And both left behind trails. One in the form of his own fluids, confessions on tape. The other in a digital library of obsessions and that single forgotten knife sheath. So you think Kohberger was emulating Rawlings? Or was it more of a, I'm going to take a little piece of you here too as I piece together my inverted crucifix of human monsters?
There's just some stark differences here. There might have been this constant, what's the word I'm looking for? This constant need to be validated by women. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, it might have been very similar. But I guess if you're going to copy somebody, why not go all in?
No.
Why would you stop? Why would you not do the essay part of it? Because that was the hallmark of Rawling, wasn't it?
And that's the thing. I just think everything went to shit for Kohberger in terms of his planning.
I think to back that up is the fact that he left the sheath behind. This is a guy who knew better.
I think the essay was like going to be the highlight for him. And I think and that's what I think turned this into this rage situation beyond control, because he was interrupted in this thing that he had been planning, that he'd been looking forward to in the sick, fucked up way that Bryan Kohberger thinks. And it's like everything went wrong in his mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the rage just, it went further. He was already going in there with rage. But then the same people who would always, in his mind, are the same types of people that would represent, in his mind, that were, would put him down or made him feel not cool or unpopular. He was never part of their group, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. They did it again. They did it because, and rather than ever looking at himself and going, gee, maybe it's me, and these people are nice people, if I could just learn how to communicate. But no, it's them. And so again, he's going in to do this thing that he's so excited about, and that's those same, just normal, healthy, responsible kids, to the most you can be responsible at that age. Again, screwed up his plans.
Which surprises me that maybe this was so startling for him that he didn't continue on in a killing type spree or didn't try again because it went so terribly wrong. I wonder if he had been successful, quote unquote successful. I don't mean in terms of, wow, you did a great thing, but no, if he had gotten to do what he set out to do, whatever that was, would that have fed the beast so that he continue on?
Or would, do it again? Or the fact that if he got away with it, that would feed the beast. If he had gotten away with it, I think that would have fed him. And I think his own perfectionism would have made him do it again, because he would be looking back going at how sloppy things were. Yeah. And he'd be looking back going, how can I do this better next time? So I think that would have been, mode to do it again. Now, people talk about he was shopping for another K-bar, a knife sheath. shortly thereafter. And I don't know if that would have been to go out and commit another murder, or if it would have been to say, because I don't think he thought he was being looked at yet at that moment in time. So, but in the event that they did, he was going to try and be a step ahead and go, no, I got my knife sheath right here. But
I think that's what he was probably doing.
But then realized they could look that up.
Yeah.
And then I think in his mind, when he had that little realization there, I think he probably started thinking, oh shit, they could probably look up that I bought that one too. Oh fuck. And I can just see his beady eyes.
Yeah.
Just realizing an obvious thing that would have been obvious to the rest of the world, but so foreign to Bryan Kohberger. So, there you go. Rawling.
Wow.
It's an interesting comparison. I'm gonna have to watch some more Rawling stuff because that was a long time ago. That was like the 90s, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. I was a kid. So I would be interesting though to see mannerisms is kind of what I'm curious about. But Rawling, from what I've seen, was very personable, and that's the difference with Kohberger. So many of these killers had personalities. There was
Look at Bundy.
Yes, there was something behind the monster. Kohberger is just the monster.
Yeah.
Being run by like an empty soul. It's like if AI was a human being monster, and it's just like pulling from every piece of knowledge it has about killers, and at the end, it's just like a computer program. There's nothing there. It's empty. Obviously, he's a human being. You know, he knows right from wrong. But it's how do you understand that sort of a way of thinking? That's other than it just feeds on fear and hate and yeah. Ugh. All right.
It's just so unnecessary. It's just,
Yeah.
go find some people to hang out with. Learn how to be personable. People want to teach others how to be human.
But I think some people are just too out there.
Too damaged.
I don't want to even say damaged. I just think sometimes yes, damaged, but I think sometimes you're just kind of born that way. So damaged compared to everyone else. When I think damaged, I think like traumas and things like that. If this is just how your brain functions, that's just how your brain functions. Too, I think, miswired, I guess, would be. Because it's like, it's not damage if that's how you came out.
Man.
Unless something caused the damage, it's like this is naturally just. And there's not. I mean, there's a lot of people, obviously, with a lot of narcissistic type issues and things, but there's so few that go to this length, and that's why. It's fascinating to study them.
He needs to be studied. He absolutely needs to be studied.
Or here's a creepy one to leave you with. There's not many that go to this length. Oh, is there though? Because like more than 50% of all homicides are never solved. So that would tell me there's a lot more of these people that are even worse than this guy that they can blend in far, far better.
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
When you hear the word solitary confinement, your mind probably goes to the cliches: a dark cell, maybe a steel bed bolted to the wall, a tray of food shoved through a slot once or twice a day. The reality, it can be all of that. Plus a level of psychological strain that can hollow a person out from the inside long before their sentence runs out, or their life. And for someone like Bryan Kohberger, the question isn't whether prison will be rough. That's a given. The question is whether he's going to be in that kind of isolation for months, years, or the rest of his life. because high-profile inmates, especially those accused of crimes that cross the prison code, killing young women, harming these young people as they were just about to begin life, don't just have the legal system to worry about. They have the ecosystem inside. An ecosystem where your name, your case, and your alleged actions can make you the kind of target that never stops moving, even if you're locked away in a box 23 hours a day. So how long can that box stay closed? Does prison administration ever look at someone like Kohberger and say, all right, it's time to move him into general population? Or are there cases where solitary becomes the only safe option until the inmate dies in that cell? And if that change does happen, what's waiting for him on the other side? Jeffrey Dahmer lasted less than 2 years. Other notorious inmates have been taken out within months or days, even hours. The threat isn't just a possibility. It's a given. Which begs another question. What's the incentive for other inmates to take that shot? Is it revenge? Is it about a twisted code of ethics? Or is it the oldest currency in prison, respect, notoriety, and fear? If you dig deeper, and the deeper you get into it, the more it's clear that survival behind bars isn't just about doing your time. It's about navigating a political, violent, and unpredictable social order where the wrong move or just the wrong name can get you killed. So today, we're going to look at the reality of long-term solitary, the politics that decide when it ends, and the razor-edge inmates they walk when they carry the kind of notoriety Bryan Kohberger does. Joining me to break all this down is someone who understands the calculations from both sides of the courtroom, former prosecutor and now defense attorney Eric Faddis. Eric, let's get into it.
In theory, he could be in solitary for years and years. However, what often happens is that they don't keep a person there forever unless you're on death row or something like that. And so what the staff looks at is they look at resources, they look at risk level, they look at historical record of the person while in custody. And there have been a number of high profile folks that have been transferred to general population or some equivalent thereof. And those folks have a target on their back, especially when we're talking about Kohberger. Killing young women is usually a taboo crime in prison, and he's done that multiple times over. And so multiple targets on his back, and I don't think they're going to keep him in protective custody forever.
And that's going to be interesting to see what happens then. I mean, Dahmer lasted less than 2 years. I just did a piece yesterday that went through so many high-profile killers, and they don't last long. The target is there. Why is the target there? Let me ask you that, and I think I know the answer, but maybe you can explain it better. Why is there such a target on somebody like Kohberger's back, someone who's going to be in prison for the rest of his life? What is the benefit for someone behind bars to go after Bryan Kohberger?
There are a lot of considerations. There are prison politics at play. Even in prison, there is an ethical code, and there are certain crimes and perpetrators who are far less desirable and looked down upon. Like I said, killing young women is usually a no-no in prison. He's done that multiple times over. On top of that, these folks don't have much to lose, especially folks who are in prison for the rest of their lives. And so killing somebody else is not going to make their situation substantially worse. On top of that, there is some infamy that can be gained, some respect, some notoriety, some fear within those prison walls if you take out a high-profile perpetrator like Kohberger. So a number of incentives within those facilities for folks to target Kohberger if they can reach him, and there are ways in which he can be reached.
Expand upon that a little bit. Like what, you get the notoriety, you get, some of the respect in there. I mean, you are behind prison walls. Does that give you more security yourself because you are the one who took out someone like a Bryan Kohberger, or does that make you a bigger target to yourself because now you're somewhat infamous? You're the guy who took out Bryan Kohberger. If somebody takes out the guy who took out Bryan Kohberger, and maybe you're a guy who took out some other people too, I would think that would make you a bit of a target too. It's like kind of on both ends. Like one end's on the feeding chain here, one's way up here. I don't know. Kohberger's like low-hanging fruit to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the particular ecosystem within that specific prison. But certainly, there is an idea about like in prison, kind of keeping your head down, doing your time, not doing too much in there. And when you're taking out a high profile inmate and killing him, well, then your name gets around and some folks might give you respect and fear you. Other folks might say, hey, you're the new guy with the target. You think you're this big top dog who took out this high profile inmate. Well, we're going to show you you're not the top dog. And so all of those things go on, and it's and on top of that, Tony, these folks have so much time on their hands that all they have to do is think about these kind of things and scheme and plot. And that's how we see, assaults and killings in facilities.
If we could just take the ingenuity of our prison system and the people that are in it and use it for something good. Imagine all the things we could get done beyond license plates. I think there's a lot of ingenuity there. I mean, you're talking people who evaded the system for quite some time usually, and there's a lot of intelligence there. And if they're just using it to torment Bryan Kohberger, I mean, I'm okay with that one. But again, using it for other things would be lovely. Is there anything, I mean, if you were Bryan Kohberger's attorney right now and you're advising him, obviously he's waived, he's not going to appeal, he's just there he's there for the rest of his life. There's no more court hearings for Bryan Kohberger. But, he does have some rights. What are you telling him? What are you telling him how to survive this? How to get on is there getting on somebody's good side? What would you be advising him to survive basically at this point?
Some folks on the inside want to like join a gang because there's strength in numbers, there's protection in numbers. I don't think a gang is going to take him. Even a white supremacist gang is probably going to say, yeah, hey, come hang out with us and then shank him in the yard or whatever. So I don't think that's going to work. The one angle he might have is he does have allegedly this autism diagnosis and, does constant verbal and emotional torment exacerbate that condition? Is he particularly vulnerable to psychological injury because of that? And could that warrant some kind of change in circumstances based on, requests filed within the prison system? It's at least possible. And so that's something I would explore if I was his counsel.
It's like the only option that you may have at this point. Have you ever seen something like that be argued and be successful? I mean, if you look at most of the inmates in prison, I'm going to guess you have a very high percentage of folks that are, either somewhere on an autism spectrum, personality disorder, mental health issues. I mean, there's a lot of things there that one could say are beyond the control of that individual, and it's a mental health type problem. Historically, prisons aren't that accepting of those things of even being like accepted as legit. Obviously they are. We know that they are. But when you weigh it with the horrible things that we know Kohberger did, that sort of consideration, doesn't hold a ton of weight, at least in, the general population. But when you're talking about more of an institutional type setting that should realistically consider that sort of thing, I mean, consider it if it wasn't Bryan Kohberger. If this was someone who's wrongly convicted, hey, let's take Richard Allen, for example, who I believe was wrongly convicted, who I'm sure they're not giving any sort of, leniency to. Do you expect it here for Bryan Kohberger? Is this something they'd even consider?
I think at the very most, they would kind of go through the motions to give the appearance that they were considering that, and then eventually just say, too bad, bro. But another potential out that Kohberger could consider is providing more information. He could come with some kind of proposal to prison officials, to the DOJ, to local prosecutors, and say, hey, I'll tell you all about why I did this and how I did it and who helped me, if anybody, if you'll give me some kind of break here within these prison walls. We saw that with Ghislaine Maxwell, and she's kind of sitting pretty at this this nice, low security resort. And so that's what you can think about.
That is an interest, like using it as a carrot to dangle out there. But let me ask you this: even if you were to do that, at the end of the day, it seems like a lot of these decisions are made within the prison walls. They're not made in the justice system. They're not made in a courtroom. There's no courtroom saying you're going to be in solitary confinement. That when he gets to the jail, they're like, well, how are we going to handle this here? They make that choice. So I mean, it really just could be somebody who's like, screw him, put him in general population tomorrow. There's not a court that's going to stop that. And by the time if somebody went and tried to find some sort of injunction on him, can you even put an injunction on that? Is there any way to stop that? Should the warden say, we're moving him? Can a judge say, no, put him back in solitary?
I don't see any viable legal mechanism by which Kohberger could contest such actions by prison administration. There is no ongoing case. And as a prosecutor and defense attorney, I see in court all the time, requests being made by inmates that, hey, I'm not getting my medicine, or hey, I'm not getting proper nutrition, or stuff like that. And the courts just say, hey, the jail is not under my jurisdiction. The prison is not under my jurisdiction. They're not a party to this case. And for Kohberger, there is no more case except for appellate proceedings, which is different. So no, a court is not going to step in and in fact would have no jurisdiction to step in and hear such a challenge unless it was some kind of Eighth Amendment cruel and unusual punishment, habeas corpus, something or other. And even then, I think the chances are slim to none.
Is that a problem? I mean, let's take Kohberger out of the equation here. I mean, because that is a scary prospect. It's a reality of what we deal with in this country, what we're living with right now, what we're accepting as free people in our country for how we treat those that we have incarcerated. Not everyone incarcerated is guilty. There's a good chunk that are not. To accept that as okay, like they're not getting the medication they need when it is available, when it's basic, simple decencies to humans, not like here you're going to get an extra Snickers tonight or anything, just basic, okay, so you can survive. And there's plenty of people who didn't murder 4 college students who are behind bars as well. There doesn't seem to be very much oversight. It seems to be kind of, where these prisons are run by whoever you get to run them. Sometimes they're humane and they're run very well. Sometimes, they're horrific. And it's run kind of by monsterish human beings that like to be monsters to other people. Again, with not a lot of oversight and not a lot of consequences. This has gone on forever in our country. We've heard this. You wouldn't expect it to be going on in 2025, but it really is.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And I've seen some hellish circumstances, some just indifferent callousness within those prison and jail systems that, like you said, that there's no real way to remedy it. You don't have a legal avenue you can pursue. You can't file a motion with the court saying, hey, the jail officials are putting me at risk or something like that. Can't do that. And so, does there need to be some kind of adjudicative process within the institutions themselves? There is when there's misconduct, when inmates are cited for doing something wrong. But what about when the jail staff is doing something wrong? That happens all the time, whether folks want to believe it or not. And so, there is no such process. But should there be some kind of independent oversight or some sort of internal adjudicative, fair, impartial process to address these grievances, you'd have a heck of a lot of grievances from these folks who have a lot of time on their hands, but maybe it's worth it.
Listening to Eric lay it all out, one thing becomes clear. The decision to keep someone like Bryan Kohberger in solitary or to move him is less about his comfort and more about logistics, resources, and risk management. It's a chess game where the pieces are violence, politics, and the constant calculation of how much is this going to cost us if it goes wrong. In theory, solitary confinement could go on indefinitely. In practice, prison officials often make changes based on staffing, space, and their read on the inmate's behavior. But as Eric pointed out, moving someone like Kohberger into a less restrictive setting doesn't remove the target on his back. It just puts him closer to the people who might want to collect on it. That target exists for a reason. Inside, there's a hierarchy. And certain crimes drop you straight to the bottom. Killing young women, killing children. Those are marks that never wash off. And in the notoriety of a case that's made national headlines, international headlines, and you've got a mix of motives for other inmates, revenge, self-righteousness under the prison code, and the kind of infamy that carries weight on the inside. For someone serving life, what's one more body if it earns you a name everyone in the yard knows? And a canteen filled by the general public that's happy you did something great. And sure, there are ways an inmate might try to survive that reality. Alliances, gangs, deals with the administration, but those are no guarantees, especially when no one wants to give you a deal. Sorry, Bryan, you're going to die. In Kohberger's case, even angles like the autism diagnosis or mental health vulnerabilities are unlikely to generate more than surface-level gestures of concern from a system that, as Eric reminded us, often just goes through the motions before saying, too bad. The harder truth is that there's no legal magic wand to wave here. Once the courts are done with you, your day-to-day safety isn't argued in front of a judge. It's decided inside those walls. That's true whether you're guilty, innocent, or somewhere in between. And while most people aren't losing sleep over Kohberger's comfort, the fact that our prison system operates with so little oversight should make anyone think twice. Because this isn't just about him, it's about a system where decisions about life, death, and safety are made out of public view, where no meaningful check-in or check on the people making them takes place. In Kohberger's case, solitary might be the least worst option. For someone else, it could be a death sentence, and unless something changes, the line between the two is just as thin as the walls of that cell.
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
There's a certain irony in talking about Bryan Kohberger's conditions behind bars. Because for a man accused of taking out 4 college students in one of the most brutal and high-profile cases in recent history, the idea of his suffering is going to land differently depending on who you ask. There's maybe 1 or 2 people on this planet who may say, I don't want that for him. Probably mom and dad. And that's about it. Some people will shrug and say, good. Others will lean in with morbid curiosity. Others will fill the canteen of the prisoners who are making his life a little living hell, wanting to know just how miserable things can get when the state locks you away and throws away the key. At least, that's what we're going to be diving into today, now that Bryan is spending the rest of his life behind bars. But what's filtering out now from the Idaho Maximum Security Institution paints a picture that's both unsurprising and somewhat unprecedented. On one hand, anyone who spent more than 5 minutes studying the prison system knows these are not kind, quiet, or safe places. On the other, what's allegedly happening to Kohberger feels organized, coordinated. Like the population inside the prison was just as ready for his arrival as the media circus outside. We're not talking about garden variety name-calling from down the tier. We're talking about inmates using the prison's own ventilation system like an intercom, directing their voices, their taunts, their threats straight into Kohberger's cell exclusively, taking shifts to keep it going 24 hours a day. If true, it's harassment on a schedule. And it raises some complicated questions. Is this simply the prison ecosystem at work, or is it something more calculated? Does it matter whether the words being hurled are just juvenile insults or credible threats? And legally, is any of this crossing the line into cruel and unusual punishment? Or is this exactly the kind of treatment you sign up for in an unspoken kind of way when you commit acts so horrific that your very name becomes a target? This isn't about defending Bryan Kohberger. It's about understanding the line between what the public thinks should happen to someone like him behind bars and what the law and the Constitution actually say. Because in a world where podcasts, YouTube channels, and social media keep cases like this in the public eye 24/7, you have to wonder, are inmates now carrying out the public's will in real time? And if so, is that okay? To break this down, the psychology, the legality, the reality, I'm joined by someone who's been on both sides of the courtroom, former prosecutor and defense attorney Eric Faddis. Let's dive into this.
Well, look, folks who are incarcerated can devise some ingenious ways to influence their environment, and that includes targeting other inmates. And I think you're right that the mass public exposure and awareness of these cases that didn't necessarily exist in the 40s, the 50s, 60s, things like that, contributes to that. And so all of these, or most of the inmates, know what's going on, know what Kohberger is there for, and they got a lot of time on their hands. And so they are going to devise ways to bring about the outcomes they want and to do the things they want. It looks like that's what they're doing here.
Very much. I mean, is there, I mean, if you're, and I'm in no way trying to play the part of Kohberger's side, I'm just kind of playing the part of, I don't know, I don't even want to say sanity because I am condoning this. I'm not condemning this. But is there a point ever? I mean, do they ever I know nothing about prisons other than what I've seen on television and that sort of thing. Do they ever clamp down on this? Do they ever go, knock it off, guys? Like, this is too much. This is too much, even just for the guards to deal with or others to have to deal with in here? Or is it literally just part of the ecosystem? Just as the sky is blue, prisons are going to be loud and taunting and hellish.
On one hand, it is the lay of the land. That's kind of how these things go. And look, there are way more prisoners than there are staff. And so the staff doesn't have the resources or time to be micromanaging, every word that comes out of these people's mouths directed at somebody else. Now, they do have to be careful. If an inmate lodges multiple concerns about threats upon his or her life and jail staff does absolutely nothing, could there be some kind of civil liability in the future? Possibly. And so jail staff has to be aware of how the inmates are treated and whether there are any threats to violence to inmates that appear credible, and then sometimes taking action upon those reports.
Okay, so you got all these guys all shouting at Kohberger, going directly into his vent, tormenting him. And the prison has made a statement saying they're aware of the complaints. They're aware of the complaints. It's neither here nor there, basically. I'm going to guess the inmates aren't necessarily the folks that are thinking, gee, I probably shouldn't say something threatening because that could come back to bite me in the ass. I better keep this very clean and really, really keep the terminology correct. They're not. They don't have to worry about that. They're not on a broadcast. They're not on a podcast. They're not worrying it. They're just going to say whatever the hell they're going to say. And I'm going to guess a lot of that involves destroying his life or taking it away or orifices of his, things of that nature. That's got to be flying around there. Now, there is an obligation, obviously, in a prison setting to protect a prisoner from physical violence. You can't just have a free-for-all where everybody's getting shanked left and right and nobody's stopping this. That's not how this works. But psychologically, there really isn't much of a anything. There is no safeguard there, is there?
There really isn't. It's not the staff's responsibility to protect the feelings of any of the folks in there. And, one thing to keep in mind, in a prison, you're likely to have some people who are dangerous. And then when you take it up a level to solitary confinement, oftentimes those are individuals involved in gangs. Sometimes they're individuals who have committed sensitive type of crimes. But yeah, there's going to be some of that sort of, kind of schoolyard bullying times a million. And that kind of thing is going to be pretty much just overlooked by the prison. They've got other stuff to worry about unless there is a credible credible and imminent threat on the safety of an inmate, they're probably going to kind of let this ride.
Is there anything that Kohberger's defense, and I don't know who's the defense, I don't know if Ann Kohberger is still there, or Ann Kohberger, and Taylor, I keep connecting the two. Let's hope that never happens, Ann, run for your life. Is there any, I mean, I don't know if Ann Taylor is still part of the council or not, but whatever council he has, whatever the state has given him, is there any recourse there? Is there anything they can do about any of this, or is this Kohberger just kind of got to take it?
There are kind of two things that come to mind. One thing that they can consider is if Kohberger can compile, like I said, a credible imminent threat on his safety, he can request, a transfer outside of solitary, but that's not the best option for him. He could request a transfer to another facility where this stuff is likely going to happen again. The real only potential out he might have is if he were to develop some kind of physical medical ailment. And that, his circumstances exacerbated that documented medical diagnosis. Under limited circumstances, they can get some kind of relief, but it's usually just transfers and shuffling these folks around to similar environments where the same thing is likely to happen.
There's not a way around it, because you could go down the road of, could this torment him enough to the point where it becomes a psychological problem? Even when we've seen psychological problems arise, I mean, take Richard Allen, for example, in the Delphi case. He was eating his own poop and running into a wall head first, and nobody said, gee, maybe we should take him out of here. Maybe we should do something different. Even when you go to that far, even if we end up seeing Kohberger having a nice shit sandwich, which I think they should televise. Does that, I mean, it seems like it takes a lot. It takes a lot for any change to happen. And even if change does happen, at the end of the day, security and protecting his life is going to be, paramount. Nobody wants him to die on their watch. Eventually, I think somebody's going to have it happen. But if you move him, if he's psychologically damaged to a mental health type facility, a prison type mental health facility, you're back there exposed. You're out there. You are in a population, a general population, a different type of general population than you would be like in the yard and in the cell. But, hierarchy still lives there. And I think some people even argue at times it's more dangerous in a mental health area, because you're dealing with people who have serious mental health problems, beyond just the folks that are behind bars in the normal situation. There's no real route here that seems that this might be as good as it gets for Kohberger right now, where the least of his worries are people taunting him through HVAC ventilation. Is that kind of what we're getting at here?
Yeah, and as unpleasant as that might be, I think folks are going to contrast that with the egregious, brutal acts that he admitted to committing and say, hey, tough shit, man. He's in protective custody. He can't get more protected. Even if he were transferred to some kind of mental health unit, there are problems there. And in fact, like you said, he's probably less protected in such an environment. They're usually more open. Usually other inmates have access to you in those mental health wards and divisions of prisons. So, this might be as good as it gets, but it's still a hell of a lot better than what his victims got.
So what do we take away from all this? On one level, what's happening to Bryan Kohberger, if the reports are accurate, is a perfect example of prison culture doing exactly what prison culture does. You drop someone in that environment with the kind of notoriety Kohberger has, and he's going to get attention. And it's not going to be nice attention. And unless there's a shank involved or blood on the floor, it's unlikely that staff are going to drop everything to make it stop. On another level, though, it forces us to confront a question we don't often want to think about. Where is the line between punishment and cruelty? When we all know prisons are dangerous, ugly places, we all know they're full of people who've done terrible things, people who don't care about the law or the finer points of the Eighth Amendment. But when you've got inmates allegedly coordinating harassment through air vents in shifts 24 hours a day, it's fair to ask whether that's an environment being allowed to fester or being actively ignored because the target is someone the public despise. The reality is, for someone like Kohberger, there are no good options. Move him into general population and the threat level goes up, possibly fatally. Transfer him to another facility and the odds are the same treatment will start up right again. Stick him in a mental health unit and now he's exposed to a different kind of instability, possibly even more dangerous. Keep him in solitary and sure, maybe the physical danger is lower, but the psychological grind is relentless. Maybe that's the point for a lot of people listening. The truth is there's zero public sympathy for whatever discomfort Kohberger is experiencing right now. And given the charges that he has been brought up on and has admitted to, you can understand why. But if we're being honest, this conversation was never about sympathy for him. It's about the system itself, what it tolerates, what it enables, and how much of that is driven by the unspoken desire to see certain inmates broken down when they're locked away for the rest of their lives. When the death penalty isn't what they get. Is this the same thing? In a more cruel and unusual way. In Kohberger's case, maybe this is as good as it gets. Taunts through the HVAC instead of a blade in the yard. And maybe for the people who see his alleged crimes as beyond redemption, and they're not alleged anymore, that's just as fine. But it's worth remembering. The same system that lets this happen to him is the one we rely on to uphold the rights of everyone else as well. And if it can ignore the rules for him, it can ignore them for anyone. That's the uncomfortable truth, and it's not going anywhere, no matter how loud the noise through those vents gets. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. Just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. If you're not already there, do that same search wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of our coverage on this and the many cases we cover on the go on the podcast platform. Do check it out. And let me know your thoughts, please. Comments. We look forward to those. Until next time, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.